A few weeks ago, Cinema Hero announced a collaboration between a few other YouTubers that has become the DCCU, the DC Cinematic Universe. You've already seen Superman, Man of Tomorrow, the Batman, and Green Lantern. And now, my name is JT Videos, and without further ado, this is The Flash. The movie opens inside a classroom in Central City University. Inside the classroom, we find Wally West, played by Jack Quaid, listening to a Communications 101 lecture he is taking for a general education requirement. Wally is 25 and getting his second degree. His first one was in physics, and this one is in biochemical engineering. Sitting on either side of Wally are his friends from the Central City Police Department, Manuel Lago, played by Darren Criss, and Patty Spivot, played by Annalisa Cochrane, both who are also in Communications 101 for a general education requirement, which they both believe is ridiculous since they are both studying criminal justice, and what the heck does communications have to do with the criminal justice system anyways? Sitting just behind Wally is Connie Naleski, played by Dakota Fanning. In a similar situation to the three, she is an up-and-coming fashion model who is studying graphic design, but is forced to take Com 101 to complete one of her general education requirements. Wally thinks she's cute, but he's too afraid to talk to her. The class is taught by communications graduate student Linda Park, played by Jessica Henwick, who Wally also thinks is cute, but finds the lecture so boring. He can't stand the thought of having to listen to her talk about communications in the news all day, especially since she will be working for Picture News after she graduates this year, something Wally is very familiar with thanks to his Aunt Iris working there as their headline reporter. As class ends, Patty tells Wally that he better not be late today or Captain Frye will have his head. Wally rolls his eyes, but as he stands up to leave, Linda calls him over. Linda tells Wally that she is super impressed by Wally's essay about his hero, the Flash. Wally smiles and starts talking about all of his favorite stories that he heard about the Flash, such as on February 11th, 1988, when the Flash first appeared and defeated Captain Cold when he attempted to freeze Central City. March 10th, 1990, when Flash stopped Captain Boomerang from robbing Central City Bank. December 5th, 1995, when Gorilla Grodd attempted to mind control the entirety of Central City before the Flash crafted a neurological implant to suppress his mind control capabilities. Or September 15th, 2000, when the Flash stopped a new villain group called the Rogues, headed by Captain Cold and the Trickster, from blowing up the Central City Capitol building. Wally's personal favorite memory, however, is when his Aunt Iris took him to see the opening of the Flash Museum on February 11, 2005, when young Wally got to see the Flash in person as the mayor of Central City declared February 11th Flash Appreciation Day, commemorating the years of dedication and service the Flash gave to the citizens of Central City. Wally says that while he loves the Flash, and he certainly made Central City a much safer place, he said the Flash has not been seen since 2018. Linda chuckles and tells Wally that she can tell he really loves the Flash and really appreciated all the research he conducted for their latest research assignment. Wally smiles, but as he looks down at his watch, he realizes that he is going to be late for his internship once again. He apologizes to Linda and quickly runs off. We watch as Wally runs inside the Central City Police Department as we see him pass the crime lab. He stealthily attempts to sneak into the engineering wing. As he does, we hear a man scream, "West!" Wally turns around as we see Captain Darryl Frye, played by Ed Harris, who scolds Wally for once again being late. Frye tells Wally that his uncle used to also have issues getting to work on time, but that Wally is still just a lowly intern, and he was given this internship in part thanks to his uncle's strong recommendation. Wally sighs as Frye tells Wally to head home. He will be coming back later in the night to work the evening shift, and that he should not be late. We watch as Wally walks home to the household of Barry Allen and Iris West. Wally has been living with his aunt and uncle since he was a teenager following the tragic death of his parents. As Wally walks inside, we are greeted by Barry Allen, played by Rob Lowe, a retired member of the Central City Police Department known as one of the best crime scene detectives in all of Central City, and Iris West, played by Jennifer Garner, the head primetime reporter for Picture News. Barry asks Wally about his day. As Wally explains to Barry about him arriving late once again, Iris begins to scold Wally as Barry intervenes and reminds her that he was also not always the most consistent when it came to arriving places on time. Barry reminds Wally of the importance of his job, while Iris mentions that she finally met Linda today. Linda is going to be taking over for Iris as a primetime reporter at Picture News after she retires later in the month. Wally smiles as he heads to his room. He throws his backpack down, plops on his bed, and sighs as we see his room is filled with posters and action figures of the Flash. Cut to later that night in the engineering wing of the Central City Police Department. We find that Wally is sitting in a chair watching the Perils of Penelope pit stop on his phone. As Captain Frye walks into the room and asks Wally what he's doing. Wally explains that he managed to complete the required repairs to police equipment in less than an hour. Frye goes and tests out the equipment, and much to his surprise, every repair had been fully completed in less than an hour, and everything is working properly. Frye tells Wally good work, but his night isn't over. There's a storm coming, and the chemicals and lab equipment kept in the crime lab need to be transferred to the storage room in case the storm gets bad enough. Frye tells Wally that he's headed out, but to have a good night, and that he's free to leave as soon as he completes the transport of this equipment. Wally puts down his phone, sighs, and heads to the crime lab to begin moving the items to the storage room. We watch as Wally is packing up items such as beakers and tongs. Outside, we see that there is lightning as we hear thunder crack right outside the window. Wally quickly runs to put the beakers and tongs in the storage closet as he returns to move the chemicals. Suddenly, lightning breaks through the window of the lab, striking Wally and drenching him with the chemicals being contained in the beakers that he was attempting to transport. We watch as Wally lies on the ground. He attempts to garner enough strength to stand after the lightning strike, and as he does, he tells himself that he should be dead. There's no way that he could be hit with lightning and drenched in chemicals and still survive. Wally eventually manages to stand up fully and finds that, to his surprise, he feels completely fine, and his body suffered no burns, cuts, or bruises from the strike, although his head does hurt a bit. Wally decides that he needs to sweep up the broken glass from the beakers, and as he begins to walk to grab the broom, he moves so quickly that he face plants into the wall. Despite the impact, his nose isn't bleeding or broken, and once again, he didn't suffer any other physical injuries as a result. Wally looks at the broom and has an idea. He's going to attempt to sweep up and move around the remaining equipment into the storage closet as fast as he can. Wally begins running around the room, cleaning up the broken glass and moving the items into the storage closet in a matter of seconds. Wally screams in excitement as he finishes moving the items, but quickly notices that his clothes are on fire as a fire alarm inside the lab begins flashing and the sprinkler system activates and drenches Wally. Wally quickly changes into a crime lab uniform and decides to head home and tell Barry and Iris that he thinks he's gained the powers of his hero, the Flash. We watch as Wally returns home around 3 a.m. and shouts for Barry and Iris. We watch as Barry and Iris slowly walk to the living room as Iris scolds Wally for waking them up in the early hours of the morning, and Barry asks why he is wearing a crime lab uniform. Wally tells Iris he is sorry, but that it's an emergency. Wally then proceeds to explain what happened in the laboratory, how he managed to move so fast that his clothes burned off. Iris and Barry look at each other as Barry goes to close all the blinds and make sure that nobody is standing outside of the house, as he proceeds to tell Wally that the same thing happened to him in October 1988. That night, he became the Flash. Wally is in disbelief, and he tells Barry that he doesn't believe him. Barry sighs as in a matter of seconds he appears in front of Wally wearing the classic Flash costume. Wally's jaw drops as he begins to ask Barry all about fighting some of his most well-known foes. Captain Cold, Captain Boomerang, Trickster. Barry quickly cuts him off and asks him if that's all he remembers the Flash for. Barry explains that there is much more to being the Flash than just the villains. It's about the times that he saved people from burning buildings, or gave orphans toys on Christmas Day. Wally ignores Barry's lecture and asks him why he decided to retire. Barry explains that around 2018, he had the realization that most of the criminals that had given Central City trouble had either given up their evil ways or were serving the remainder of their days in Iron Heights Penitentiary. Along with this, crime had reached an all-time low, and he truly felt that he had done his part to help Central City, and giving up his role as the Flash would allow him to spend more time with Iris. and with all of that being taken into consideration, he decided to hang up the costume. Wally tells Barry that the Flash is his hero, and despite all the improvements made to Central City, the city still needs a hero, someone that kids can look up to and want to model their lives after. And after thinking for a minute, Wally suggests that perhaps he should be the one to assume the title of Flash now that he's been granted these new powers. Iris quickly says no, as she doesn't want Wally being put in danger, while Barry once again reiterates that being the Flash is much more than simply donning a suit, running extremely fast, and fighting bad guys. Despite this, Wally insists that he take over. He's never had something to call his own, and he gained his new abilities for some reason. So why not make that reason to protect the people of Central City and continue the legacy of the Flash? Iris sighs as Barry says that he's going to contact his old team from the crime lab, as they might be able to have some more insight into how they should move forward. Wally smiles as we watch the three head to bed. Cut to the following afternoon as we see Barry sitting in the kitchen with Wally, Kristen Kramer, played by Laura Dern, and James Forrest, played by Keith David. Barry explains to Wally that Kramer and Forrest are his friends from the crime lab who retired with him a few years ago, and that they are some of the only people who know about him being the Flash. Barry further explains that both Kramer and Forrest helped him out when he was active as the Flash. They helped him create his first suit and made sure he was always eating properly and healing steadily after his missions. Kramer notes that she wasn't a fan of Barry at first, but he slowly grew on her as they started working more and more, while Forrest sighs and says he wishes he could get back to working on his boat. Barry chuckles nervously as he explains the situation to his friends and asks them their thoughts on what should be done about Wally. Forrest notes that being the Flash is kind of like driving a boat. You have to be steady, watch the waves as they roll, and check the weather frequently. Wally looks at Forrest confused as Kramer tells Wally to ignore him. She mentions that having a new hero protecting the citizens of Central City wouldn't be a bad idea, but she isn't capable of providing all the help she used to. Forrest agrees with Kramer and says that the only thing he remembers is how they created the first Flash suit out of reinforced tripolymer and a silica-based quartz sand fabric to prevent the suit from burning up. Forrest and Kramer agree that they could work to make a new suit, but providing Wally with the proper nutrition would be a different story, especially since his body will likely take a bit to adjust to the changes that will come along with his new powers. As we see Barry contemplate what could be done, Kramer pipes up and says that she recently started going to see Dr. Tina McGee, a nutritionist at the newly opened Gene Tech, for dietary advice, and that it might be a good idea to talk to her about helping out Wally. Barry asks Kramer if she 100% trusts McGee, and Kramer nods. Barry looks to Wally and tells him that it appears that they'll be making a visit to Gene Tech. Kramer says that she will come with the two, while Forrest mentions that he can start throwing together a new suit for Wally while they are gone. He remembers the process fairly well, so it shouldn't be much of a hassle for him. Barry nods as he looks to Wally and says, "Are you ready?" And Wally nods. Cut to Gene Tech, where we see Wally, Barry, and Kristen walking with Dr. Tina McGee, played by Ellie Taylor, to her office. On the way, Tina introduces the group to her husband, Dr. Jerry McGee, played by Justin Hartley, the founder of Gene Tech and a specialist in hyperphysiology. Jerry nods at the group and welcomes them to Gene Tech, as Tina continues to lead the group to her office. As the group enters the office, they all take a seat as Tina asks them what exactly they are coming to see her for. Barry explains the situation and that anyone who has access to the abilities that he and Wally have burn calories at an accelerated rate based on the physical toll that moving at super speed takes on their bodies. Not to mention, with super speed comes a super metabolism. Tina chuckles in disbelief as she looks at the group and says that she doesn't believe them. Suddenly, we watch as Wally quickly speeds around the office, knocking over all of Tina's files and throwing her papers everywhere. Wally stops just long enough for Tina to realize what just happened, before quickly cleaning up the mess and returning all of the files to their proper place on the shelf. Wally returns to his seat, with his shirt getting burnt off as Barry quickly begins putting out the flame on his pants leg as Wally asks Tina if she believes him now. Tina sits in shock as she says she can't believe what she just saw. It was the most incredible athletic feat that she has ever seen in her entire life. And she would love to start developing a nutrition plan with Wally. Wally smiles as Tina says that there will be one condition for her help. That being that the Flash will endorse Gene Tech as the best place for nutritional advice and training in exchange for her help and keeping Wally and Barry's identity secret. Wally immediately accepts as Barry looks to Wally and mentions that he does not know how he feels about Wally using the Flash title for promotional purposes. Wally reassures him that while Barry was always super heroic as the Flash, his marketing skills were always a bit subpar. Kristen gets a phone call and tells the group that Forrest completed the new suit and they should go check it out. Tina hands Wally a Gene Tech t-shirt and says that she is looking forward to their new partnership as the group exits her office. We cut back to the Allen household as we see Wally, Barry, and Kristen looking at Forrest, who is standing in the living room holding a dark crimson Flash suit. Wally walks up and takes the suit and begins to smile as he stares down at the Flash symbol in the middle of the chest. Wally looks to Barry and tells him how much of an honor it is to take up the mantle from his hero. Barry tells Wally to put on the suit. He needs to take him somewhere before they begin discussing his training. We cut to Iron Heights Penitentiary, where we see Barry and Wally both wearing their Flash costumes as Barry introduces Wally to Gregory Wolfe, played by Ernie Hudson, the warden of Iron Heights Penitentiary, who lets the two walk around the maximum security prison. Wally comments that he never understood why Barry never gave his villains cool nicknames, like Magilla the mind-controlling gorilla or Gargamel or something like that. Barry turns to Wally and scolds him for making jokes out of the residents of the penitentiary. Barry explains that the villains he fought are not necessarily bad guys because they are bad people, but most of them turn to a life of crime based on the circumstances they found themselves in. As Barry and Wally continue walking around, we cut to a prison cell where inside sits Leonard Snart, aka Captain Cold, played by Bill Hader, who comments that he believes he hears Flash. He's disappointed that it has been 5 years since the Flash last visited him. He can't believe he forgot about him. In the cell next to Snart, we find Gorilla Grodd, voiced by Sir Patrick Stewart, who comments that Flash is the same as all the other humans, fickle creatures who attempt to attain moral superiority but falter when things get difficult. Grodd explains that he has been reading Machiavelli, Socrates, and Kant since he's been locked up, and discovered that the human species is flawed in every way, and there's no better example than the prison system. People who need help are sent to prison to rot instead of being given the proper care and support that they deserve. Snart pipes up and reminds Grodd that Flash used to visit him and actually made Snart feel like someone cared about him. But now that he's stopped, he's ready to make the Flash regret ever giving up on him. Grodd says that he is willing to help Snart escape and get his revenge against Flash, but in order to do this, Snart will need to remove the neuroblocker that the Flash placed on the back of Grodd's head, which prevented his mind-controlling powers from working. Grodd's plan is to have Snart request his cell to be made colder and colder, gradually causing Snart to regain some of his cryokinetic powers he obtained during his time fighting the Flash, which will grant him enough power to break through the prison walls, allowing him to remove the neuroblocker from Grodd and allowing both to escape. The two agree on their plan of escape as we cut back to Barry and Wally, who agree to begin training together. We cut to a montage. First we see Wally and Barry training. Barry shows Wally how to perform various techniques such as phasing, the proper ability to stop when coming out of super speed, and how to create the Flash tornado. We also cut and see Wally using his newfound confidence to ask out Connie, who becomes his girlfriend. We watch as they go on several dates, but Wally does not feel a real emotional connection with her as he only asks her out based on her appearance, not because of who she is as a person. We also see Wally using his newfound fame as a Flash to help promote Gene Tech, appearing in advertisements with Dr. McGee and becoming the official spokesperson and the face of Lightspeed energy bars. While Wally has attempted to promote his status to that of a celebrity figure in Central City, people of Central City have dubbed him Flatu, mostly because the people already had a Flash, and this new Flash is not the same as the original. Wally is frustrated by this, especially after Linda Park appeared on Picture News and gave him this nickname. We also see Snart slowly regaining his powers as he slowly convinces the guards at Iron Heights to keep lowering the temperature in his cell. saying that the heat on the outside is causing his cell to feel more like a furnace. Cut to around 3 months later. We watch as Snart taps the wall inside his cell and tells Grodd that he thinks he will finally be able to break through the wall. We then watch as Snart quickly winds up and punches his way through the prison wall, the freezing temperature having the effect of both weakening the prison wall structure and increasing Snart's physical strength. We watch as Snart removes the neuroblocker from Grodd's head. As Grodd regains the ability to use mind control, we watch as he controls Warden Wolfe and the other officers inside the penitentiary as they open up Grodd and Snart's cell doors. We watch as alarms begin sounding inside the maximum security prison as Grodd commands the guards to recover Snart's cold gun as we see Snart smile. Grodd tells Snart that this is only the beginning and they need to head to the Flash Museum. Grodd will command the guards to begin gathering supplies needed for his plan to fix humanity. We cut inside the Allen household as Wally and Barry are arguing as Iris watches television in the living room. Barry tells Wally that he is extremely disappointed in how he has handled his time as the Flash, choosing to focus on building his image instead of helping those in Central City who need it most. Wally says he is upset that Barry hasn't supported his decision to promote the Flash's brand, and just because he isn't following the exact steps Barry took doesn't mean he is any less of a hero than he was. As the two keep arguing, Iris quickly calls the two into the room to check out the breaking news report from Picture News. The two watch as we see Linda Park reporting on a developing story, that being a prison break that just occurred at Iron Heights Penitentiary. Suddenly, we watch as Captain Cold and Gorilla Grodd walk up to the camera. Cold grabs Park as Grodd begins talking into the microphone, mind-controlling the cameraman to ensure that he does not run away, and holds the mic up to his mouth. Grodd explains that he used to live in Gorilla City, a thriving city of gorillas located on the African continent. One day, the city was destroyed during a war between two countries of man, years ago, killing all the inhabitants except for Grodd. Grodd discovered one of the soldiers was a man from Central City, which is when he decided to launch his attack in 1995 by mind-controlling the citizens of Central City to attack each other and attempt to destroy and burn down all of the buildings, for the Flash managed to stop him. Grodd apologizes for the attack and says that during his time in prison, he learned the errors of his ways, and knows that the war that destroyed his people was merely because of the fundamental flaws of humanity. Grodd explains that humanity took a step backwards in its evolutionary cycle, that humans are willing to lock up their own kind, promote addiction to alcohol and drugs, and kill each other over petty matters. In an attempt to give back to humanity, Grodd announces that he is planning to launch a DNA-modifying gas on Central City that will transform all of the residents into gorillas, the more noble and civilized of the two species, thus righting the wrong of his attack years ago and moving society forward in the process. Grodd says that this change will occur in a little under an hour, so the populace should prepare to have their lives enhanced forever. As Grodd walks away, Cold walks in front of the camera and warns Flash that the two will be operating from the Flash Museum, and that he will be keeping the reporter company until his old pal, the Scarlet Speedster, arrives. Wally tells Barry that they have to hurry because Linda could be in danger. Barry looks to Iris, who nods and says, "It looks like Central City's going to need Flash and Flatu, or everyone will be gorillas in a matter of hours." Cut to the outside of the Flash Museum as we see Captain Cold sitting in front of the statue of Flash as we watch Barry and Wally run in front of Captain Cold, who laughs and greets the Flash. He asks Barry who the new guy is. Barry shrugs and says, "You can call him Kid Flash, I guess?" Wally rolls his eyes, but comments that it is still better than the name Flatu, as Barry looks to Cold and asks him why he's doing this. Cold screams that the Flash doesn't care about him anymore and never did, as we watch Captain Cold begin to battle Barry and Wally. We watch as Cold manages to blast Wally with his cold gun as he and Barry trade blows. We slowly watch as Wally phases out of the ice and begins pummeling Captain Cold. Watch as Wally holds Captain Cold up by his jacket in front of the statue of Flash. He screams at him for almost hurting Linda and prepares to deliver a fatal final blow, for Barry screams and stops Wally. Barry looks at Cold and asks him, "Why are you doing this?" Cold screams at Barry, telling him that for his entire life, nobody cared about him or what he did. He was a nobody, a loner. Until the Flash began coming to check on him in prison weekly, making sure he was getting help, eating properly. Cold says that he felt like at least one person cared about him. Until all of a sudden the Flash stopped coming to visit. He once again felt like he was a nobody, and it was proof to him that no one could ever care about him. Barry profusely apologizes to Cold, telling him that he had no idea the weekly meetings meant so much to him, and that he had things come up in his life that made seeing him every week difficult, but that, despite this, he never stopped caring about Cold, and if he ever gave off the wrong impression, he's truly sorry. As Cold and Barry hug, Wally watches on and contemplates what Barry told him about what it means to be the Flash. Wally goes to check on Linda, who tells him that everything is okay, before Barry tells Wally that they are not done. They need to go in and stop Grodd before he manages to turn everyone in Central City into gorillas, as we watch the two speedsters hurry inside. On the inside of the museum, we watch as Wally and Barry sneak around, avoiding being seen by the Iron Heights guards and museum staff that are under Grodd's mind control, and are guarding and patrolling the area. Watch as Wally and Barry manage to sneak onto the roof, where we find Grodd putting the finishing touches on the DNA modifier. Grodd notices the two and tells Flash that it has been a while, but he will not allow Flash to once again foil his plans, and that, in response to this, he will seek to find out who of the two Flashes is better. We watch as Grodd begins mind-controlling Barry, who begins a brief fight with Wally. Wally manages to use his intellect to recall that Barry used a neuroblocker to stop Grodd. We watch as Wally races Barry through the museum, as Wally gathers the necessary materials and puts them together to form his own version of the neuroblocker. We watch as he races back onto the roof, and he punches the machine on the back of Grodd's head, releasing Barry, the Iron Heights guards, and the museum staff of his mind control. We then watch as Wally and Barry team up to beat Grodd, knocking him out through their combined strength, and we watch as the two attempt to find a way to turn off the machine. Barry looks to Wally and exclaims that they only have 30 seconds before the machine is activated, and from the looks of it, Grodd designed it to be foolproof. There's no way they can turn it off. As Barry begins contemplating if he could use the Speed Force to fix the mess, we watch as Cold runs onto the roof and uses his cold gun to freeze the top part of the machine where the gas would be released. Barry looks to Cold and tells him that even if he manages to prevent the gas from being released, the machine will explode and possibly kill everyone in the building. Cold screams that he knows the consequences, but tells Flash and Kid Flash to rescue the people inside. Cold might be a bad guy, but he doesn't allow innocent people to die on his watch if possible. We then watch as Cold continues freezing the top of the device as Wally and Barry race to get all the people out of the building. We watch as Wally and Barry stand on the outside of the museum with all the people from the inside, as we cut back to Cold continuing to freeze the machine as suddenly it explodes. The force of the explosion sends a shockwave around Central City. Miraculously, as the dust clears, the Flash Museum did not crumble due to the energy released by the explosion. But as Barry and Wally rush to the top of the museum, we find the lifeless body of Leonard Snart, who managed to prevent the gas from being released on Central City, but died in the process. Barry kneels as Wally looks on, realizing that Barry was right. Just because Captain Cold had done bad things, it didn't mean that he was truly a bad person deep down. He was a victim of circumstance, but a victim who died a hero. Cut to 3 weeks later, at the funeral of Leonard Snart, we see the entire staff of Iron Heights Penitentiary and the Central City Police Department, including Wally West, Iris West, Darryl Frye, Patty Spivot, Manuel Lago, Kristen Kramer, James Forrest, and Gregory Wolfe. We watch as retired crime scene analyst Barry Allen delivers a eulogy for Snart, commenting about how he worked with Snart on a few occasions during his crime scene investigations, and while he did not always do the right thing, he was a misunderstood man who flipped the script and died a hero. After the funeral, we watch as Linda Park walks up to Wally outside and comments about how nice it was for Barry to pay for all the funeral expenses for Snart. Wally smiles and says that his uncle is a good man and that he's just doing whatever it takes to make sure that a citizen of Central City is taken care of. Linda asks Wally about how things are going with Connie. Wally chuckles and says that there have been some major changes in his life. He broke up with Connie because he didn't feel anything special with her and also decided to change his academic path from getting a second degree in biochemical engineering to a criminal justice degree. He intends to move to the Central City crime lab like his uncle before him. Linda smiles and said she is happy to hear about everything going on in Wally's life, but would also love to hear Wally's thoughts on Fla2. Since he was such a big fan of the original Flash, she wants his thoughts on Central City's newest hero. Wally smiles and asks Linda if she wants to go grab lunch, and he'd be happy to discuss. Linda smiles and agrees as we watch the two walk away as the film ends. Following the credits, we see a figure standing at the gravestone of Leonard Snart. The camera pans, and we see that a woman is standing there. She is revealed to be Lisa Snart, played by Rachel McAdams, who says, "I can't believe it. Flash killed my brother. Perhaps the Flash deserves to get put in his place once again. Maybe I should see about getting the gang back together." And that is the Flash. So once again, everyone, this has been a part of Cinema Heroes DCCU. I will link everybody else who is a part of this collaboration in the description below. But next up is Wonder Woman, which you can find on Jack V Films channel. Now, in the comments section, I want you all to debate, who do you think would actually win, Jack or Films? Now, with that being said, thank you all for watching. My name is JT Vids. I have a Discord server, which you can join in the description, as well as an Instagram page I'd encourage you all to follow. Now you can go ahead and hit the button to subscribe or check out my latest episode of my personal series, Rebooted MCU. Now again, make sure to go check out all of the other creators featured in this video in the description below. And I hope you all will check out the remaining projects of the DCCU and look forward to The Flash 2 when it comes out sometime later this year. I hope you all enjoyed, and take care.